Okay, my name is Lawrence McGlynn, and you're listening to the award-winning Philadelphia Hall Monitor here on WPPM 106.5 FM in Philadelphia, on Comcast Channel 66, and streaming live at phillycam.org. You can find us on Twitter at Hall Monitor WPPM, on our website www.hallmonitor.org, or on Facebook at PHM WPPM. Tonight on the program, we'll be joined by Lisa Haber. We'll discuss the school district facilities plan with us. Vanessa Maria Graber and Denise Clay Murray will interview Majul K. Johnson of the Avenging the Ancestors Coalition. And if we have any time left, we'll discuss last night's State of the Union address. Hopefully, we won't have any time left. Denise, how are you tonight?
I'm good. I'm good. I sat through that entire speech for the first time in a long time, and you know, it's I've never seen anyone lie that prolifically in that much time, like from the very beginning to the very end.
Yeah.
And you kind of just sat there and said, you know, I miss the days when the State of the Union was actually a letter sent to a joint session of Congress,
Mm-hmm.
and we did not have to sit through this.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
And they're not just little lies. I've stopped 8 wars. Well, no, you keep saying that, but you didn't do anything. It's really amazing, but what are you going to do? So let's talk about something real, and that is the school district's facility plan, which is very important here in Philadelphia. So let's bring on Lisa Haver to tell us a little bit about that. Lisa, how are you?
Hey, Larry, good. Hey, Denise. I'm remote reporting tonight. As you can see, I'm in a school classroom. And by the way, to anyone who listened to that speech last night, I say thank you for your service. I'm at Moffett Elementary right now, and in the auditorium, which I just came from, they're holding a special meeting to discuss the district's recommendation for Moffett Elementary, which is a K-5 school. It's basically at Front and Oxford Streets in that neighborhood that is called a lot of different things. It's sort of on the cusp of Fishtown. I've heard people call it West Allegheny. It's a lovely neighborhood. People love their school. They say it's a gem. It's a very, very diverse community. I'm reading from the statement that the Moffett family sent to the Board of Education. Moffett is a jewel. Our community includes Black, Latino, Russian, Arabic families. It's a very, very tight neighborhood here. Because tomorrow, Superintendent Tony Watlington is going to be presenting the plan, the facilities plan that has been in the making for over a year. And the reason why Moffett is important, and the reason why I want to come here, not just as a member of the Alliance for Philadelphia Public Schools, but from Hall Monitor, because what's happening at Moffett, we think, but we don't know, is happening at a number of other schools. And what I'm talking about is, you know, that there have been hearings at schools that are targeted for closure. That's 20 schools. However, there are a number of things happening at other schools. So if you go on the district website, you'll see school closings, relocations, modernizations. Now, I checked this out and I asked it again when I got here. Is the recommendation that these parents heard about, is that part of the plan? And we were told, yes, it is. However, nobody knows about it except for the Moffett people, because it has not been on the district website and still is not on the district website. So we, at APS, because we're at a lot of these meetings, people contact us. We had a meeting with the Moffett families last week, but we don't know how many other schools are being affected. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. I've been to so many of these meetings. The recommendation for Moffett would be, right now it's a K-5 school. The district wants to basically change it to a middle school, be a 5 to 8 school, and join with Hackett, which is another school. This school is in 19122. Hackett's in 19125. But I want to stress that because, again, we're going to all these meetings and we hear Superintendent Watlington talk about transparency and we're listening. Nobody at Moffitt or Hackett ever went to a meeting and said, could you please change our school from an elementary to a middle school? It didn't happen. So people are here now tonight, families with kids. One family who said, we've been part of this community for 15 years. Another speaker who said, my children are the third generation of Moffitt kids. People are very tight here. So it's, you can't say we're listening when you just come up with a plan that had nothing to do with what anybody at this school. Sorry, a little background noise. No problem. Parents are coming in and out of the meeting. It's frustrating because you've spent so much time at these meetings sort of, refuting the half-truths, the gaslighting, the things that are said that are irrelevant, to this school. And what we talked about before and what I wrote about for Home Monitor this time is what's happening with the plan and what happened in City Council last week, which I know you were there to see that. Council kind of came alive. It gave me some hope because I had been frustrated. I'm in council almost every week. I talked to some of the council members. This facilities plan started. The first meeting was held in September 2024. We were there up at 5 Points in the Northeast. Now, since then, it's really, council members haven't been that involved. I know we have tried to, talk to some of them about it, but there hasn't really been a lot of involvement. The education committee hasn't held any hearings. But once the district, sorry, like I said, I'm at a school building. Once the district released the plan and the council members saw which schools were being targeted, they got very upset. I saw council member Ketsi Lozada was at Conwell Middle School. Nikhil Saval was at Penn Treaty School. As a matter of fact, Nikhil Saval is here tonight at Moffitt. Councilmember Jamie Gautier is very upset about what's going on in her district, in particular, the district's plan to close Robeson, which is, again, one of those schools that is not a big school, but has a lot of community support and a lot of parent loyalty. So council really, I thought, really did a good job. They were asking questions that were not easy questions. One thing that the district is doing is moving to close down a lot of the small schools, like Robeson in West Philly, Lankanaw Environmental Sciences High School in Upper Roxborough, Conwell Middle Magnet School, the Parkway Northwest School for Peace and Justice, which was started, I want to say like 20 years ago, was a big project and was very important. And people who helped to establish that school still volunteer at that school. So these are schools that have a lot of community support, and they don't understand why they're just being tossed on the trash heap. I want to know what you guys thought about that, because I know you were there, but I want to stress two things. That one question the council asked was really important is, Watlington is saying this plan is going to cost $2.8 billion. The question is for what? What is that for? And where are we getting the money from? I mean, I think the obvious question is, if the district could get its hand on $2.8 billion, there are a lot of things that we could be spending that money on, other than, consultants and plans that are incoherent and muddled and nobody wants. And also what I talked about this week is not enough attention, I think, is being paid to the mayor, because when it comes down to it, the Mayor Sherelle Parker, is the decider. And it was disappointing that she wrote an op-ed co-authored with Superintendent Watlington on February 3rd in the Inquirer saying this is a great plan and the board should vote for it. February 3rd happened to be the day of the first meeting in the community about the plan. So, like, whoa, you know, you haven't actually heard from anybody yet, but you're in the Inquirer on the editorial page saying, you know, this is a great plan. And I think that is a problem that people aren't aware. I take that back. People in many meetings that we went to are aware. And one parent at Robeson, and she was also the same parent, was at the town hall about a week later, said, I'm a real estate agent. I'm going to tell you, this is about a land grab. This is about a real estate. Now, I think even casual political observers of politics in the city know that the mayor has a lot of political and financial backing from developers. I mean, we saw that all through the arena debacle. And so people are saying, why are you closing down my school? It's achieving, it's got a lot of support, the kids love it. My child wasn't doing well at a big high school, he's doing well, why are you closing it down? And I got to tell you, a lot of people are coming to the conclusion that this is about gentrification and development.
Yeah.
One of the schools, and I looked this up for myself during the city council hearing. One of the schools that they're talking about closing is the Lankenau School. This is a school with a 99% graduation rate. So that kind of made me scratch my head a little bit. Superintendent Tony Wadlington is saying that he's not basing the closures and consolidations on anything other than what's best for the kids. So the question becomes how is he coming to that determination when you have schools on the chopping block that are exactly what people want from their schools?
Here's the kind of circular reasoning, if it's even that. So when you go to these meetings, and you've been to Penn Treaty and Robeson, I was at Lankenau, we've been to a lot of them, and they give the same presentation. And the message is, this is going to be good for everybody. Okay, I would say, one, it seems to be good for everybody except for all the people at all the schools that you're talking about. They don't seem to feel that it's going to be good for them. And two, if you're asking people to, like, you know, sacrifice for the greater good, we have to know what that is. And I'm stressing again, we don't know what is in this plan. And I verified it again tonight at Moffitt. I said, is this it on the school district website so that anybody can go and say, well, you know what? I really don't want them to close my child's school, but I'm going to say, let me see the whole plan and I can see what's best for the whole city and everybody. You can't do that. So when you say it's going to be good for everybody, am I supposed to just trust you? Because I don't think the people at this school who only have a meeting tonight because they complained, and they have everybody here, from what I've heard, loves their principal, and the administration here and the parents put a lot of pressure, and they have a meeting. This is the only meeting that I know of that has taken place at a school that is not slated for closure. They're slated for some kind of weird grade configuration. But they had to make noise, they had to organize, they had to demand a hearing. So when the district and their consultants and, you know, people that you see in these meetings say it's good for everybody, there's no way to know that because you haven't told me what you're doing for everybody. So tomorrow, Superintendent Wadlington is presenting a plan. Now, they haven't posted it on the website. We did ask last time, please post it on the website so we can look at it. So the first glimpse that the public will get of the plan as it is now will be tomorrow at the school board meeting. I ask this question at every single meeting that I go to, Robeson, Conwell, Penn Treaty, etc. when is the board going to vote on the plan? And nobody will answer. And as a matter of fact, you were there last Tuesday, October 17th, in City Council, when even the council members asked President Reginald Streeter, when are you going to vote on this plan? And he would not say. All he would say is, we're not going to vote on it at the February action meeting. They could vote on it next month. And if they weren't going to vote on it next month, I think they would say, we're not going to vote on it in February or March. You know, we need a little bit more time. So you're not telling me that you're not voting in March. I'm going to assume that you're voting in March. That's 1 month.
And it's surprising the lack of transparency here, because we're talking about 20 schools
that are to be closed.
Right.
Not including all the other schools that they're doing something else to.
Right. And I was surprised by the sheer number. Now, my suspicion is when the final vote comes, it will not be 20 schools. That's just my thought.
Having been through this before, Larry and Denise, in 2012 and 2013, and that's how APS got organized to try to stop that. And what I said in my commentary was, you know, APS was part of the coalition that tried to fight the closing of 23 public schools in 2013, and that was done by the state-imposed School Reform Commission. And it is a betrayal to me of everybody in the city, but in particular, people who fought to get back local control and never imagined that we would be going through the same devastation that we did under, you know, the SRC and Governor Corbett. And, you know, it just, we're like, yay, you know, we got our school board back, and here we are. So whose needs is this school district serving? You know, when we go to school board meetings, and President Streeter likes to quote from the Messiah people, and it's, I think, well, I'm not sure if it's on his letterhead, but I've seen it in writing. And how are the children? And this is, to me, having looked at it and analyzed it, and again, gone out and talked to people at grade schools, high schools, middle schools, and by the way, the school where I taught for 11 years, Harding Middle School, is on the chopping block. It's not only not child-centered. I really say without hesitation, this is a very cruel plan. It takes into account no feelings of the parents, of the students, of the families, of the communities. You know, again, I will repeat, gentlemen here, parent saying, you know, this is the third generation here at Moffett. And I remember back in 2012 when we were lobbying in city council, and I don't remember which council member it was, and we were just sitting there in the waiting room, and a woman who worked there, a staffer for this council member, actually brought out a scrapbook and showed us pictures. I'm sorry, I don't remember what school, but it's not around anymore. Pictures of her mother going to the school, she and her brothers and sisters going to the school, and her two children going to the school. And that's, I always think about that. We were just shocked, like, wow, somebody keeps a scrapbook of their school. But yeah, because it's your second home. And you feel like those teachers are kind of like, you know, they're kind of like your parents when you're not in school, and they care about you. And, you know, a principal at a school like this, a small little, probably knows the name of every kid in this school. And so when I say it's cruel, to me, it looks like it was just written by consultants. And I would say it's data driven, although even the council members said, where's the data in this plan that you're calling data driven? But it's so like, it just not even humane to think about all of the things and the turmoil that is going to happen in families and communities. There was a parent here, a young parent, very upset, almost in tears, because she has one autistic child. I believe she said 8 years old. she's very upset. Moffitt has an autistic support program. Does the other school that they're going to have one? They couldn't get a straight answer on that. But, you know, many autistic children, one thing that they have in common is change is very difficult. So you're going from this place that you walk 3 blocks to, now you may have to take a bus. That's a new thing. Or walk farther. That's a new thing. Everything will be new. Why is this parent now for the first time able to talk directly to a school board representative the day before this plan is being presented? I'm sorry, school district representative, the day before it's presented to the board. Why is this the first time anybody's heard from her? And again, I say, because they demanded a hearing. You know, it's a really, you know, for every time you say the word transparency, I will tell you how you're not being transparent.
So, process-wise, if you're a family in one of these schools that's on the list, is there anything you can do?
Well, always there's something you can do. You can fight it. And again, I'm going to say, you know, the council member, Jay Young, I spoke to briefly last night. He's totally in support of the Moffitt parents. State Senator Nikhil Saval is here. We've gotten people in, you know, Jamie Gautier supporting, Robeson, Ketzinger Lozada supporting Conwell. There's a lot of support. So one thing that we've always said is like, call your council member. They really, I mean, they were really not happy in that hearing. So that's one thing, because there is a lot of support now. Better late than never, but it's there. And when you asked me, Larry, a little while ago, what can people, you know, are they just going to make a few changes and say that's it? And that is that's a possibility, because we saw that in 2013, that communities that came together and fought back actually did win, unfortunately at the expense of other school communities. So if you have political support, or if you get organized and make enough noise, yeah, your school might stay open. And I know that I am hopeful that some of the schools that we talked about are going to be taken off the closure list. And I think that is because of support from council members and members of the Philadelphia delegation to Harrisburg. But this is a bad plan overall. It's not just bad that you're going to close schools. It's incoherent. It is really half-baked. It is just a really, like I said, you know, even to call it a plan is a misnomer. It's just like a collection of recommendations that is not coherent and doesn't seem to be really data-driven. So one, you know, talk to your council members. They've been really responsive. 2, go to the board meeting tomorrow. And as a matter of fact, I don't know if apps can take total credit for this, but they have expanded the speaker list. They're allowing more speakers than usual. So if somebody goes and I didn't make it on the speakers list, go, because you could possibly make it onto the waiting list. Between February and March, and I hope I'm wrong, but I do expect them to vote in March. There's a lot that people can do. One is, you know, get in touch with APPS, Alliance for Philadelphia Public Schools. We've talked to a lot of school communities. We have the experience. We've been through this before. We are in touch with a lot of the elected officials. So, you know, Harding's fighting for Harding and Moffitt's, you know, fighting for Moffitt, and that's really great. It's great to see people turn out. But we really don't want to see a Hunger Games situation here. And obviously, you know, parents are going to fight to keep their kids in the school that they feel that their child is safe and learning. But you really don't want to see, okay, well, I won and I'm going to go home. And you can't ask people to do so much. You know, people are parents, they're working, they're taking care of kids. You know, they really want to make sure that their child is safe and in a good school. And that's what the Moffitt parents are here tonight to say. We at APS are saying, you know, this plan really, as it is right now, is not going to work out well for anybody. When one of the, I would say, lies that they're telling people is, okay, next year's a planning year and nothing's going to happen. That's not reality, because what happens as soon as you put a target on a school, people start moving out. Teachers may think that they better hurry up and transfer to another school before they have no more options. So you can call next year a planning year. I don't know what you're planning if the board already decides. I don't know what you're planning. I think it's really just an illusion to make people think they have a voice. But as soon as you say something's going to happen to a school, the wheels start turning. I mean, and we saw that in 2014 when Steele in Lyceum, Tioga, and Munoz Marin in North Philly and Fairhill were targeted. Like they didn't know what was going to happen. They might have turned into a charter school. They won the fight, but between the time it was announced and the time they won the fight, there were a number of teachers who transferred because they weren't going to be accepted if it was a charter school. So I'm giving just a couple examples, but to say, don't worry, nothing's going to happen. It's already happening. And it's not fair to tell people, don't worry, nothing's going to happen, when everybody is going to be looking out for their child, for their community, staff people, teachers looking out for, you know, their jobs and their job security.
And, you know, I think the superintendent gave away more than he meant to in last week's meeting when I forget who it was either Councilmember Lozada or Councilmember Bass. He said something along the lines of, well, just tell us which schools you want to close and we'll switch them out. And I thought, what? That's crazy talk. What are you talking about here? But it said to me, there wasn't a lot of thought into this, and we'll just do a 1-for-1 switch if it makes you happy.
I don't know who wrote this plan. I will say, you know, they hired consultants who were running the meetings, and I assume that they had a big part in writing the plan. All I know is who didn't write it. You know, like the parents at Robeson or Parkway Northwest or Harding, etc., parents at Moffitt, they had nothing to do with this at all. So I don't know who did.
Now, who are the consultants? Does anybody know who those people are? Is it Boston Consulting like it was last time around?
No. Good memory. The main consulting company is Brownstone, and there were 3 consulting companies total. Brownstone was the main one, but I know the district, the board voted on resolutions totaling over $5 million for the consultants. The interesting thing is, we've been to meetings where somebody will just say, you know, hi, I'm Mary Jones, I'm facilitating. And we know, you know, so we raise our hand and say, are you from the district? They don't even want to say they're from the consulting company. You know, it's like bad optics. But we always say, okay, you're Mary Jones from Brownstone Consulting, right? It's just part of the deception that the board and the district puts out there, that you are not actually, you're talking to some district people, but the person you're talking to is facilitating is not a school district representative.
So, Lisa, where can people learn more about apps?
We're at appsphilly.net. We are, right now, I'd say the best place to find us on social media would be Blue Sky. We're getting our Instagram account back up. You know, there's so much going on social media, as you well know. But we are, well, you can always find us in person at the school board meeting. We'll be there tomorrow. We're at appsphilly.net. All the information's there. Anybody who's at a school that, you know, doesn't really know what to do, email us, reach out. We're happy to get with people and try to stop this mess.
All right. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes,
Thank you, Larry. Thanks, Denise.
All right. And we'd like to bring on Vanessa Maria Graber now. And Denise, you and Vanessa did an interview earlier today.
Mm-hmm. We okay, what happened there? We okay. We we interviewed one of the members of the steering committee of the Avenging the Ancestors Coalition. That's the group of people that have been kind of central to the discussion of the President's House memorial at 6th and Market Street. Vanessa found this person from someone she had seen on Instagram that had been doing history lessons about that and some of the issues going on at the president's house, and he was kind enough to give us some of his time today.
Oh, actually, I've known Michael for a really long time. I didn't just find him on Instagram. He's a friend of mine. He's an organizer, and he's worked on a number of campaigns, and he was kind enough to talk with us today. So let's take a listen. Hello, I'm Vanessa Maria Graber here with Denise Clay Murray, and we are joined by Majul K. Johnson, who is on the steering committee of the Avenging the Ancestors Coalition, and also a tour guide with the Black Journey. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So we are in Philadelphia, where there is a major court battle happening with the slavery exhibit that is in front of Independence Mall. And for our viewers that aren't aware of what's going on, President Trump earlier issued an executive order to the Department of Interior to remove all exhibits that don't have a positive interpretation of U.S. history. So can you tell us a little bit more about that executive order and what happened with the slavery exhibit?
Yes, the executive order is the executive order is entitled "Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History." In history, though, of course, it does the exact opposite. Initially, it was released in the early last summer, and they were supposed to come up with what they were planning on doing with the memorial, and he said on the 17th of September. And the 17th of September came and went. We've been organizing around it since the early summer. But the 17th came and went, and then on January 22nd, the order went into effect, and the memorial began to be taken down. In downtown system, that began to be taken down and down at the park. Since then, we've rallied and organized. Herbert, the city sued. He sued the Department of the Interior, Avenging the Ancestors, and the Black Journey are amici, so friends of the court, amici on that. On that lawsuit, and so far we won the preliminary injunction in the court, in the federal court with Judge Roof, to stop to stop anything else from being taken down, but also to restore the memorial. And then at 5 p.m. on the day that the memorial was supposed to be restored, he restored in full. The federal government, which had already appealed the lawsuit, and in the injunction, they had been granted a partial stay, and then a partial stay paid to the restoration, to the injunction. So essentially what that means is everything that's been put up has to stay up. But what they did not put up in time for it to be fully done, what they did not put up before 5 p.m. has to stay down.
Thank you so much for that overview of the legal battle. I want to zoom out a little bit, because this is really about erasing Black history and erasing any history that doesn't promote our white presidents or, white people in a positive manner. Can you tell us about the wider impact of that and how that mobilized so many people into action in Philadelphia?
Yes, listen, the memorial at the President's house is the first of its kind high memorial on federal property to the enslaved people of the United States. United States. And so it really is more symbolic than what many would think. Here we have the original executive mansion of the United States, the original White House, and it is a place where the first president of the United States, a man who owned 316 enslaved people, owned 9 enslaved people at that particular site. So here we have evidence of George Washington in his capacity as a slaveholder, as an enslaver here in Philadelphia, where he served out the bulk of his presidency. George Washington is the only president never to serve in Washington, and then he helps pick out the city. The city helps to design some of the buildings in the city, including the White House. But he is the only president to never live in the White House. The other president that lived at the president's house after George Washington was John Adams, who was not a slave owner. In fact, he was actually vehemently against slavery, but he was the first person to move into the White House in D.C. The symbolism here of the erasure of Black history and of history at large, but especially Black history. We know that there are people who are uncomfortable with telling the full story of America, which of course the full story of America is good, bad, indifferent. And indifferent, it's warts at all. It's warts and all. This is a country where the founding principles, indeed were liberty, equality, justice, and humanity, but the founding reality was also slavery, and mistreatment of indigenous peoples as well. And this has not always been fully a land of the free for everyone here, although it has been the ever-present task of each successive generation, as I like to say, to make those professed ideals ever more real for ourselves and our posterity. And unfortunately, we have had ups and downs, and right now we're living in a period that is one of those down periods where we have a president who wants to take us back to a time where people like me and you were not we're not treated as full citizens, even to the extent that we are today. And by whitewashing history, by trying to control the historical narrative and replace it with less fact and more so propaganda, and that is a way of promoting that narrative and controlling what people think about this country. And America has never been a white man's country in the sense of purely for white people. Has never been that. As I like to tell people during our tours of the Black Journey, and reminding people that literally the Continental Army, and George Washington hated this fact, but literally the Continental Army was the most integrated racially army in American history until the Civil War. Between a quarter and a third of the people who fought for and won America's independence were people of color. They were Black and Native American. But most Americans don't know that. And this executive order would make sure that many Americans did not know that. Many Americans don't know that, because that's the exact kind of thing that they would not want to put out.
Yeah, and this is especially noteworthy because this is the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and they're celebrating the biquincentennial this summer, and so the timing, right? Is so that the hundreds of thousands of people who might be visiting Philadelphia would not be seeing that history. And before I toss it to Denise, can you talk about the community reaction? Because there were so many people who raced down there to film them removing it. And in the same vein, people raced down there to film them putting it back up. And I've seen so many videos on social media of people talking about this. Can you talk more about the community reaction, especially when you held those rallies, like how Philadelphians, especially Black Philadelphians, felt in seeing the removal of that very important exhibit and memorial?
Yes, the reaction was heartbreaking. I'm one of the people who rushed down the film them taking it down. It's because an attempt at trying to erase slavery, the history, whether it's the history of that house, whether it's the history of Whipped Peter, whether it's the history of enslaved people in Philadelphia, New Jersey, a lot of people forget that there was slavery in the North until the 1780s, and really all the way up until the 1840s. Slavery in Pennsylvania begins to end in 1780, but it doesn't fully end until 1847. I've been telling the full story of Pennsylvania and of America. The healing is one of distress. It's one of agony, because literally in trying to erase the history of my ancestors, you're trying to erase me as well, and I refuse to be erased. I feel like that has been like a clarion call for Black people, and people of color, and well-meaning people across racial lines in this city over this memorial. This memorial, because it is truly that. It's a memorial, not a monument. And the distinction, of course, being a monument is something that you build to a bygone era that you will never see again. Like to a lost ideal. But a memorial is something you literally build because you want to remember. So we're remembering the president's house. We're remembering the enslaved people who were there. And the enslaved people of the United States and their descendants. And their descendants, and remembering that slavery is not a long time ago at all, especially in this country. Someone who's 34 years old like I am, I'm only the great-great-grandchild of the last former slaves of this country. So I'm saying we're kind of this generation number 5. Number 5, but taking me and the freedmen generation, the generation that lived to the end of slavery, there's only 3 generations separating me from somebody in my family who lived at least part of their life as a slave. And that's true for anybody in their 20s, 30s, or 40s who's an African American today.
Thank you. Denise?
Yes, and thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. My question centers on the tours that you all do. As we all know, the president's house is not fully put back together. And a lot of the stuff that's missing gives context to the part that's there. Has that changed how you all do your tours, what you talk about? Do you give more detail than you would usually because of that omission?
We incorporated into the tours. We're going to continue to tell the truth and everything that we can, as best we can there. What people lose seeing and experiencing, seeing the interpretive panels themselves, and that they wound up missing what was the full design impact of this site. Like so it becomes difficult to do the tours in full with that. In full without that there. So it does impact the tours in that way, but we're still going to continue to tell the full story of the president's house and of America as best we can. While we're still fighting to make sure that this memorial is put back so that people can see fully what it is supposed to be.
Now, one thing that I noticed when the memorial was originally taken down was the number of adults and children that were coming up and putting their own facts about what went on at that house up on the blank spaces. Were you surprised to see that? And has this led to more people saying, hey, I've got to check this out because this is a piece of history that they're trying to keep away from me?
We were not we were not surprised that the outpouring of the people around the memorial hall, because we had been trying our best to inform more people about it. Since then, it has become very much symbolic of a memorial. Like, it's very like people bringing things to the memorial, like people planting flowers and stuff. This is something that we're familiar with like in the community, in the Black community and places, and in communities in general. Like, this is where people when there's a death of some kind, like that, like people bring memorials there. Like, so like the memorial seemingly in essence was destroyed. It was desecrated, and people tried to people tried to restore a sense of the hallowed ground that it is by hanging their stuff there, and actually trying to promote the history that's there. But this is like, as we will argue, like a kind of irreparable harm. Because this is a room that this can't be something that's taken away. What has to be put back there has to be what was there. What was there at the beginning, what was designed to be there. So those panels have to go back up. There's no adequate substitution. We shouldn't say that way. But people coming out now and displaying their grief, and their resolve to do something about it. It has been very heartening, and it does show that in Philadelphia, America's first and only World Heritage City, that we do care about our history and our heritage, and we're going to make sure that the full story of this city, and of the president's house and of this country is going to be told.
Now, you said you can't speak to the legal part, and I don't really want you to, but this appears to have inspired other places in the country where there are sites, historic sites that are being, I guess, messed with for a better way to put it, that people are going to court themselves. But if you're not able to be the one that goes to court, if you're just a member of the community that's looking at this site in your state or in your city and saying, no, this is, you're trying to do something to history that isn't right. What advice would you give these communities in terms of their activism? Because Avenging the Ancestors Coalition has really done a great job in terms of putting this out there to where it's national news all the time. So what advice would you give folks in terms of community response?
Okay. The advice would be organize, agitate. Hey, as Frederick Douglass once said, like, and going back to Frederick Douglass, without struggle, there is no progress. This is going to be hard. It's going to be hard. We're going to be fighting. We're fighting the most powerful government in the history of the world. But we know what we're doing. And I would say, organize yourselves around the history. Guard yourselves in the history to know that there have been fights before that have been tough, that have been won, and that you can win too. We can defeat fascism. We saw that we did win the preliminary injunction. And I would say organize into groups. If there are already groups, organize with them, and go forward in trying to protect the memorial and attacking like we are. We will provide like a we can be seen as a model of what can be done, too. But then there are people who can organize and who may want to organize in other ways as well. But we're here for advice, or advice if people want to need that as well. Because we are hoping that once this memorial is restored, that it can be replicated, like the idea, the concept can be replicated across the country, and across the country where like yeah, we're going to make sure that there are memorials to the enslaved people of these different areas, of different places that the stories are told. Stories are told about slavery, slavery. So yes, we want to restore the president's house, but we can go further as well.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate your time. And you're listening to Philadelphia Hall Monitor on WPPM 106.5.
Yeah, and I just want to end with a quote from the actual ruling from U.S. District Court Cynthia M. Roof. And she wrote in this, as if the Ministry of Truth in George Orwell's 1984 now existed with its motto, ignorance is strength, this court is now asked to determine whether the federal government has the power it claims to disassemble historical truths when it has some domain over historical facts. It does not, she wrote. And so I thought that was excellent, right? And worth mentioning, because you don't see rulings as strongly worded like that. And it does show that the courts are still a mechanism for people to use in order to seek justice. So we do hope that you'll keep us posted on the status of these injunctions. And we hope that the exhibit is there to stay permanently.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, the fight goes on. It's continuing, and there's that, like I said, the federal government has appealed, and they are said they have time to make their case. They have time to make this case. It's going to go on for a while now. It's not done, but we're going to keep soldiering on, and hopefully more and more people will join in with us, because this is a fight for, as we say, truth in history. Like, we want to tell the truth and restore our history.
Well, thank you so much, my Jewel.
Thank you.
And my Jewel is the steering committee member of the Avenging the Ancestors Coalition, currently rallying the community together in support of this very important memorial. And he's also a tour guide with the Black Journey. So if you want to learn more about Black history in Philadelphia, definitely check them out. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Denise. You guys have a good day.
Thanks.
All right. We'd like to thank Joel K. Johnson for joining us on the show. And Denise and Vanessa, thank you for doing that interview. So last night, we have 8 minutes left. All right. State of the Union address. Denise, let's start with you. What stood out?
Probably what stood out, or at least what I got, is that apparently Americans are not committing crimes. Apparently, if anything has happened to you, if you've gotten mugged, if you've gotten shot, if anything has happened to you, someone who was here illegally did it.
Or ICE.
Or ICE did it,
Yeah.
But Americans are not committing crimes anymore. Washington is 100% crime free. Memphis, Tennessee is 100% crime free. There's all these great successes of Trump sending the National Guard into these places and cleaning things up like Wyatt Earp in the Old West. Now, of course, any resemblance between that and the truth is non-existent. It's not even coincidental. It's non-existent. And I felt bad for the fact checkers that were assigned to cover this speech last night, because they probably went home and got very drunk. But, from the moment he started talking, you kind of knew where this was going to go. You kind of knew that this was basically going to be a Trump rally.
Yeah.
And now that's what the State of the Union is probably going to be for the next 2 years. It's going to be a Trump rally, complete with USA chants, the random sports team that's willing to come on and be feted by the president, and the throwing out of Congressman Al Green, who has decided that he is going to make the most of his State of the Union time by doing such things as reminding America that no, Black people are not apes. So So it's one of those things where you watch it as a journalist because you have to, but wow.
Vanessa?
It was really, really long. That's what I noticed. In fact, it was the longest State of the Union ever recorded in U.S. history at about 1 hour and 48 minutes. There was a lot of clapping, a lot of medals, and a lot of lies that were told. And we know that, of course, one thing it's for certain is that journalists and fact checkers everywhere, during the speech and after speech are rushing to fact check all of the claims that he made, and many of them were untrue. That's not something you typically see with presidents. Sometimes they do embellish a little bit, but a lot of his claims about the economy, about jobs, about immigrants, about energy prices were all untrue, right? He did not grow as many jobs as he thought he would, way less than Joe Biden. And the cost of energy has gone up. I mean, we've talked about utilities here a lot on this show, and Philadelphia is no exception. The price of PICO and PGW gas has gone up for everybody, and I imagine even more so during these winter months. And just these claims about having the best economy in the world is just simply not true. And so there's the half truths, the complete lies, and all of the above that we heard. And yeah, a lot more racist rhetoric around immigrants, right? The phrase illegal alien was used. Somebody could have played a drinking game with just the amount of times that he said that, although you'd probably get alcohol poisoning. It was really tough to hear that, especially the back and forth exchange between Representatives Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib when he was having a direct confrontation with them. He called the Democrats crazy multiple times, said they were bad people for not agreeing with his mass deportation strategy and the terrorism that he's inflicting upon immigrant communities. He did point out, several victims of crimes, although he didn't talk anything about the crimes that were committed by CPB and ICE agents in killing people like Brene Good and Alex Pretty and others. And again, there was little mention of foreign policy, right? So we didn't hear much about Venezuela and Nicolas Maduro. We didn't hear about the cartels, right? That has been a huge thing that he's been advocating on his platform, ending the drug war. He didn't talk about the capture of El Mencho and all of the cartel activity that happened this week in Mexico. He didn't talk about the starvation tactics and the sanctions that he's imposing on Cuba, right? So that's something that has also unfolded exponentially in the last weeks. He did talk about bombing Iran, to which he was met with applause. So honestly, there was nothing new there. We've heard it all before. I did feel in some ways he was turning down a lot of the hateful rhetoric. He's usually more hateful in his rallies, believe it or not. And it's almost like he seemed bored, So I'm not sure what to make of that State of the Union. But certainly it was not the best use of our time.
No, boring is a great word for it. We're going to have to leave it there. Next week on the show, Paul Steinke will be on with us, and we will see you next week on Hall Monitor.